And then if people want to come in after we've begun, that'll be okay as well. So first I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Mamta Nagaraja, and I work over at NASA, both through Johnson Space Center doing some engineering and training the crews, and then also through headquarters managing the Women at NASA program. Which, as you know, this panel is about how women in STEM, and not just women in STEM, but how we can keep women in these STEM fields and as well inspire them to enter these STEM fields when they're younger and going through their schooling. So what I've tried to do here is put together a panel that has a breadth of expertise, and I'd like to introduce them to you. I'll start off with a few questions just to give you an idea and set the tone for the panel, but then we'd really like to make it a casual conversation with you and them. And then we'll try to offer some insights and see where we go with that. So first, who we have is Dr. Terry Woods, who works at the Food and Drug Administration. She is an engineer there in their structure mechanics lab? Something like that. Yeah, close enough. Solid mechanics lab. And one of the reasons I wanted Terry to be here is, if I remember correctly, she's a dear friend of mine, and she was one of the first few women to graduate with a doctorate degree from Georgia Tech in her class. And so I think she'll be able to give us an idea, perspective of where we were then, what people did then to inspire her to get into these fields, and how we can improve on that today. Then we have Kamla Modi. Dr. Modi is a research and outreach analyst with the Girl Scout Research Institute in Manhattan. And one of the things that Kamla does is put out national reports. She does national research studies, and this year they released a study called Generation STEM, What Girls Really Think About Math, Science, Technology, and Engineering, and I think that report was fascinating, and she'll be able to help us get into these minds of these young girls. Then we have Dr. Keren Witkin, who works over at the National Institute of Health in their Office of Research on Women's Health, and she works on getting women to initiatives to help with the entry of women and maintaining them in the biomedical workforce. And I think that's an important thing. Once we get them into the workforce, there's a large attrition of women, as we know, when they get to this age where they have to start making decisions. And I think hopefully we can pull from some of these initiatives that the NIH has made as well. Then we have Morgan Occhuizzo. I love her last name, so she's got a cute way of helping me remember it. Morgan is a teacher, actually, and when I finally had the idea to put a teacher on the panel, I think it all came together, because hopefully we can take these ideas, these questions, initiatives, put them in the classroom where they can have an impact almost immediately. And then finally, we have Dr. Lance Bush, who's the president and CEO of the Challenger Center for Science Education, which is a nonprofit organization started by the families of the Challenger astronauts. And they are a source of 45 learning centers trying to foster this long-term commitment and interest in science and engineering among young students. And they also have an interest in promoting that among young girls as well. So that's our panel today. I'd like to begin with just a question of what are the current efforts that we have to inspire young girls? And I'll start with you, Dr. Bush, if you don't mind.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you. This is a small enough group, at least I'm speaking for myself, maybe not the rest of the panel. Please just interrupt me if you want to ask a question. We're small enough. I think there's about equal numbers here or there.
I think they're recording the session. That's why the light is there.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And I do want to recognize my colleague in the front row. Raise your hand. This is Kathleen Meehan-Coop. She's the Vice President of Education at the Challenger Center. So just to give you a sense of what we do at the Challenger Center, we have 45 locations around the globe. We're in South Korea, we're in England, we're in Canada. We have most of our centers here in the U.S. We pioneered STEM education over 26 years ago, actually before the acronym existed. We predate it. And when you say STEM education, basically it's not just the amalgamation of those terms. It means you're doing it innovatively. And what we did back then was try to continue the mission of the astronauts of the Challenger. And that was, education. And so what the family did was create this foundation and have kids have the opportunity to experience a space mission. So when you come to our centers, they're like going through magical Disney doors, and you get to go into mission control, go into the capsule, and it's almost like being in the Apollo 13 movie. They're all briefed up. They get pre-educational packages. We trick them into learning because they have to read the charts and graphs that are suitable to their age range. That's the whole idea of it. And when they come out of it, they see that it's teamwork. There's learning skills that are beyond just the core, you need to solve this equation. And they, like I said, it's like an Apollo 13 scenario. I mean, at first they think they're just going to go do a successful mission, except we introduce things like, oxygen levels dropping. And, they get to save their teammates. And when they come out of these things, at the end, I love being there when they finish the mission, because the kids jump up and run to each other and are doing high fives. And I just got to go up to New York City yesterday and got to do one, and I actually got in the middle of the high fives. So that's what we do. And in regards to specifically to this panel, and I'm maybe jumping ahead of the gun, I'll be quick about this, but we're focused in the middle school because we found statistics show that that's where the largest kind of mental dropout rate of students is for STEM education, and it's about 50% you lose in the pipeline, and that's a shame. And we've found that it's mostly due to kind of the way you engage students at that level. And we've been very, very successful. We have a 25-year retrospective study we did last year, and those students, we had the best results were quotes I had, one from Tess, who said, I now work in mission control at NASA, and it was due to the day I spent at the Challenger Center. And I had several other quotes like that, and I was blown away, because I thought, it'd be great enough you said, I'm working on, I'm an automotive engineer, but you literally I was like, come on, did we make this quote up? It was just so direct, but we had several of those, and actually some of them were like, they actually wanted to be a science teacher based on the experience, so that people took different things away. And with regards to the girls who participate, what our experience is that we're integrated with classrooms, and so there's no kind of opt-in, opt-out. And when you go into this experience, everybody's kind of taking their role, and so there's none of the the stereotypes or the issues that surround. Once we get into our simulations, everybody's being a teammate at that age. Between the dynamics of the group. That all melts away, and so we find that they get to participate in a way that's all meaningful to them. So I'm going to stop talking because I can monopolize this panel. So leave time for questions.
If anyone else has.
Sure. So again, I teach in Fairfax County. I'm an advanced academic resource teacher, and that means that I teach gifted students in kindergarten through 6th grade. And part of my role in the classrooms and in the schools is to promote science education, specifically with our young students. We call them young scholars in Fairfax County. These are little girls that are underrepresented gifted youth. Yeah, and I think that, again, my role is to find resources, funding, trainings in the local community that can help promote science education. And I think the hardest part for me is what to choose. I think there's so much out there. It's just you have to find it. You have to find it. You have to be resourceful. For example, we just did a science unit yesterday, and I'm thinking this is a great example. We were doing the science unit where we're teaching about electricity with our girls after school, and they're creating an electric city, and they're hooking up wires and putting them in boxes and creating the city that lights up and functions. And we have a little girl in the classroom, in this group, who's has very little support at home, and she, we had told her mother during conferences that she just has this knack for putting things together, and this is a mother who doesn't support her very much at home, doesn't support any of the children at home, and we found out yesterday that the mother went out and bought the little girl a toy train set, which she then put together on her own. She told us yesterday it took her 4 days to do it, with no help from mom, who wasn't even home. But the mother kind of handed it to her and said, "Here, have fun with this." So it's a start, and I think that that's the most exciting thing about teaching for me is those little moments. And I can share more later.
This isn't really my field of expertise, but I thought one thing that Lance said really resonated with me, which was the trick them into learning. I think there's a lot of...
That's a PhD level.
Well, no, there's a lot of data that says the way that we teach in a classroom is not the way that anybody learns, and I think that when you can trick somebody into learning, then you're really moving in the right direction.
And that's something we do at Girl Scouts too. We trick them into learning. So at Girl Scouts, you may be familiar with Girl Scouts in terms of cookies and camping, but we've become more intentional over the last 5 years with STEM and with leadership. So we tout ourselves as a premier leadership organization for girls. We've been around, of course, for 100 years. The Research Institute, which I'm a part of, has been around for 12 years. So with a lot of the programming that the girls do, they come in, they sell cookies, they're there with their friends, they're there with their troop leader, and then oops, there's STEM too. So it's like this really nice surprise. We have different what we call leadership journeys. One is called It's Your World, Change It. One is called It's Your Planet, Love It. And so they're focused on environmental science specifically, but we have badges in lots of different areas: entertainment, technology, innovation, science, engineering. So there's a lot of cool opportunities for girls. It's obviously a girls-only environment. It's girl-led. It's cooperative learning. It's hands-on. So it's all those pieces that we found from the research, which I'll talk about a little bit more, and from just what we know about what kind of environments are important for girls, which is just kind of just learning and not really worrying about, you know, if I take initiative, does that mean that I'm not as girly or I'm not being seen as attractive to boys? No, it's just all girls, none of that nonsense. They can just learn and do things with their hands and really do things and build things that we know that kids really naturally enjoy. So it's really a great venue for learning STEM and Girl Scouts.
And I guess the things that we try to do at the FDA, that I try to do, are we have interns that come in. We have Bring Your Daughters to Work Day, which has morphed to become Bring Your Kids to Work Day, to just show kids what are engineers. You know, they're not people that drive trains, which is what Mamta and I thought when we were going, who wants to go to engineering school? What is engineering school? And so to try to give kids an idea of this is what engineers do. You know, they all want to come see the labs. It's less interesting to go see the paper offices. So that's one thing we do. And we also just try, now that I'm in a position to hire people, to try to make sure that we do have as much representation in women in our research labs as we do with men. And it's nice that we do have so many qualified people that it's not as hard to find a number of women to be in the labs.
So I'd like to shift to why the why the gender gap still exists generations later. So I remember being a young girl and having some people, not as many as, I go to schools a lot more often than people came to my school nowadays, but I remember people trying to inspire us, both boys and girls, but I also remember specifically people saying that as I got older that you should be an engineer and there aren't many women, so you have to fight when you get in there and don't get down. I remember hearing these things. They didn't stick with me until I started reminiscing. I remember, oh, people did tell me that. I do remember that. So my question for the panel is, what men and women have been trying to inspire young girls for generations, and we have made progress, but we haven't really closed that gap. So what can we do differently today to close that gap faster than it's been closing? Do you have any insights into that?
That's something that really has disappointed me. When I was in engineering school in the early 80s, there were maybe 20% women in engineering, and there's not that many more now. And I have a 6th grader and a 10th grader, and I try to look at, what do they do in school, and what is it that makes girls go in a different path than the boys do, and I haven't seen anything clear. The one thing that I think we can do, though, is to give them experiential opportunities so that they can see science and engineering is fun, and you guys can do it just as well as the boys can. And again, that's the from the ground up thing that we try to do.
I think one of the things that's changed over the last 20 years is girls now are in a generation where they're told they can do anything they want. So media is telling them that, their parents are telling them that. In the study, we did focus groups, and I think 100% of the girls that we talked to said, my mom says I can do anything I want. It's very rare that a girl's going to say, my mom doesn't want me to do what I want to do, or my mom is not supporting me. So there's this general level of you can do anything. But then when it comes to how to actually go ahead and get there, that's what's missing a little bit. So, and especially in the field of STEM. So if mom doesn't know what STEM is, or dad doesn't know what STEM is, or teachers are not putting them in that direction, then they're going to just know the typical 5, law, medicine, teacher, which are all fine careers, but STEM does not have a place in that. So I think some of the messaging has to be supported, and not just you can do anything you want, that's the first step, but the second step is here are some ideas, here's some exposure, here's some opportunities that you need. What we also found from our research is that teenage girls are very much interested in STEM. We found that 74% of girls across the country in a nationally represented study are interested in the fields of STEM. So that really, I think, changes the conversation a little bit in terms of interest. In the past, we thought, well, girls are not interested, and in some cases that's still true, but if teen girls today are saying, yes, we are interested, but then the next gap is, well, STEM isn't actually a #1 choice of mine, then that's an opportunity that we need to kind of close. If there's a lot of interest, and then all that interest, 74%, changes to much, much lower, saying very few want STEM to be the first choice, then there's a lot we can do.
Could you tell me what the name of the report is?
Sure, it's called Generation STEM, What Girls Say About Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And I know I said that fast, but I have a copy of it here. I can just hand it right to you, okay? I have 2 copies. What was the other thing? Oh, we also found that girls, and this isn't, I think, a general across gender thing too, but girls want to make a difference in the world and they want to help people. And they want to do that through careers where they can see making a difference and helping people. Medicine is really, really attractive for girls. They know that clearly you're going to help someone. You're going to help someone feel better, get better, cure their cold or whatever it is. And medicine is not an easy feat. Medicine requires medical school. It's very, very high level. And so I think they can aspire to that because they see the significance, whereas engineering, they don't see the significance of that as much. And of course, we know that there is significance. We have to just tell that to girls.
In my field, which is biomedical sciences, I see 2 really big differences between then and now. One of the differences is that now the place where we see women drop out most are really at a later level, like between a postdoc and an independent position. So if you look at graduate programs in biomedical sciences, they're about 50, sometimes even 60% female. If you look at postdocs, it's about 50% female in the biological sciences. Then when you look at assistant professors, it's about 30% female, and then tenured professors is like down in the teens. And so there's really not so much a dearth of women going into biomedical sciences at the lower levels. It's a dearth of women in leadership positions. And I think that's a big change, and some of that will change over time as these new women coming in advance, but what the data shows is that these women are still dropping out at higher rates. So that's one difference, is sort of where we see the women dropping out. The other big difference, I think, is that there's been a change from there being really overt discrimination to what we call unconscious or implicit bias, which is that nobody hopefully says to you anymore, well, you're a woman, you can't do this, you're a woman, why are you even applying? But there's still, people carry with them these sort of unconscious sort of thoughts and attitudes and biases against women and about minorities and about all sorts of different groups of people. And even if you think that it doesn't affect your day-to-day decision making, for almost everybody it affects it at some level. And so I think that until we are really able to break through these implicit biases, we're going to continue to see these problems persist.
From an educator's perspective, I think that we need to start in kindergarten, and we do. At my schools, we do an engineering program for kindergarten, 1st and 2nd graders, and we bring in specialists. I was just telling Mamta when we were coming in that she Skypes every year with my student, or with my students at my schools, and I was saying at the end of the year, one of my 6th grade students said her most memorable 6th grade experience was Skyping with the NASA specialist. So, one person can make a very powerful difference in these child's lives. We're constantly getting specialists in to our classrooms to talk with these kids and work with them. My schools are under construction this year. Perfect opportunity for my little kindergarten and 1st grade students to go talk to the engineers about different structures that they're building and what supports the arch, or what supports our new windows the best. So there's lots and lots of opportunities, and anyone who has a child knows sometimes, when they come through the door after school, you say to them, what did you learn in school today? And they say, I don't know, nothing. It's when a child comes home and you say, what did you learn in school today? And they say, I got to go put on a hard hat and go outside and look at bricks and analyze the new school structure where my classroom's going to be, that you know you got them. And it's just that one little experience that can make the difference. And there's a well-known saying, you know, children don't remember what they learned in elementary school. They learned how they felt, or they remember how they felt when they learned it. And that's what I aim to do.
I think everybody here had great thoughts. I'm almost going to ride the tails of a couple people. I like what Kamla said, and that's kind of one of my thoughts, is that you know, we're all molded by our own experiences and who we see as role models. And so this is, you know, where I come from is I've had some discussions with Kathleen and other people, and the thought was like, well, yeah, we do see people entering, you know, the women pick fields where they feel like they can make a difference, and it's a more humanistic side of them. And, you know, so the easy, you know, example is like, well, you know, a generation ago, your mom might have been able to be in the nursing field, and now we're seeing more women in the doctor. Now you're the doctor, you're not the nurse, you became the doctor, so we're able to see that. But I do think it takes, like, you know, generations, because you're talking about each generation has to have their role model and do it, and so it's a slower, becomes a slower, you know, change than we'd all, you know, like to see. But I think it's great to see it, and you're right. I mean, we have to communicate though that all these fields make differences, and have, you know, where does it resonate with you? But I'd also say the other point is with Morgan saying the mentorship thing is a key thing. I was a fellow at a big learning center at Penn State University in their School of Engineering many years back, like 10, 15 years back, when we were starting to look at all of engineering for the first time, of saying, you know, is this really relevant? Like, what, you know, because mostly when you teach, you know, I mean, Terry was there, I was there in the 80s when it's like, you know, they teach you as an engineer at the university is like all these esoteric sciences, and, you know, and as you're going to be as if you're going to be an academician, and only like 3% of people who get an engineering degree become an academician, and the rest of us become practicing engineers, but that's not the way they actually teach you in the university. But so they started kind of looking at how do they, you know, and the result of that was they put together more design type courses for you to really experience engineering, to make it kind of the fun stuff that you get to play with. But one of the interesting things we did is we had this big study of engineering, kind of how you, the retention, because one of the concerns at the time was we weren't retaining women and minorities in the engineering and sciences, and quite frankly, you're not retaining many of the engineers because they always had that classic look to your right, look to your left. You know, they're not going to be there. It's like, why would you want to do that? Why don't you just fix that? And so what they did is they did this like multi-year study where we literally, it wasn't just like, you know, a few statistics. It was, you know, it was statistical. It was tracking individuals. I mean, we hunted down people who had dropped out and were home, you know, in another job. We tracked people who went through. Massive study, very expensive, and I have to chuckle to this day because, you know, and we're all engineers, so we're expecting all this data. And it comes down to the very end was like, you know, it's human nature. It's like the one statistically significant variable which predicted whether that person would stay in and make it through was that they have a mentor in their life. And mentor could be broadly defined as, you know, it could be, you know, an uncle who's an engineer who's helping you, or there was a teacher, or it could just be your mom was encouraging, you know, calling you weekly and saying, you can do this, you know, I'm here for you emotionally. There was a broad range of it. But it was like basically somebody in your life you cared about who was going to, you know, usher you through this difficult time and give you advice in different ways. So, you know, those are the kind of things we need to do more of. I think that there's a lot of organizations trying to do it. And, you know, I'm hopeful that, and I'm, you know, idealist that we are moving forward. I think we have made strides, and Kathleen will keep reminding me of that. Like we need to make sure when we use the language that we're not self-defeating and creating the same situation of, you know, because women do. I think you did say like women are interested in it, and so we need to just somehow open up the opportunity and give them the right tools in the way they can. And you know, I'm here as much to learn that as to learn as much as I can from my organization. So I'm really here to receive.
I'm a geographic anthropologist. information systems instructor at Fort Meade High School. And it's the third year of the program. The first year we started with 1 girl out of 25 students. We're up to about 35 girls out of 85 students. Are there mentorship programs available for high schools? My concern is keeping them in the program because it's a 2-year program. So this group of 35 is in their first year. So how do I go about getting them into the second year, where they're dealing with a lot of teenage boys who are very aggressive, and we are a mixed demographic group, so they don't have the support oftentimes at home to push them.
I can kind of speak to that. I'm a geographer, and I work at Penn State, but I know that there's a Geo Mentor program that exists that we can try to connect you with the leadership of that to try to get mentors for your students. And I know we're all, at the university level, I would be interested in finding out more about your program in the hopes of, establishing pipeline type things. And I think other geography university programs would be interested in doing that as well.
I heard everything you said, and I'm in total agreement with it in terms of our young girls going into these higher order professions. But my concern is, as I see it from where I sit, that we're still dealing with some cultural issues, and we're still dealing with exposure issues. And I can think right off the top of my head right now, I know some dynamic young girls, African American, and because their level of exposure is very limited, and we're talking about from their school environment, and we're also talking about family issues. When you have family that have only gone so far, they can't really delve into that world about, well, you can really do this. The conversation is very, very limited. So how do you bridge that? Now, I'm a human services professional, okay? And I deal with it in my own family, all right? You can talk to your blue, all right? And I know what I'm talking about, but it only goes so far. So what have you learned in terms of some techniques or some tricks of the trade, if you will, to be able to bridge that? Because otherwise, even as I sit here, and with all due respect, I'm glad to see women there. I see no African American women, okay? And so are we still getting the message out? So how do you bridge that still?
Okay. Yeah, my name is Sterling Jones. I run a program for students get them involved with STEM. And I'm going to answer a couple of questions. One is, students don't want you to talk to them all day. They want to fix, break, or develop something for people. And that's what I found in the 15 years. But I think the key is you got to find partners. I partner with government, NASA, I partner with NIH, and so you got to find partners to help you. And I feel that it's like back in the day we used to have study clubs because I was a 1 point and he was a 4 point, so he would come to the solar. So maybe we have competition. I'm going to give you one example. We have a solar system competition, and the 10 students on the team they do a research paper, brochure, a website, and a poster board. First year we did it on the mission. This year we're going to focus on 13 NASA centers. So each team with 10 students, and we more 70-30%. We find if you bring the girls together and they're on a team, then they want to compete. And so they can take one part of the program. So I think we really need to do more competition and get them to work together as a team, and then find some mentors to come in and mentor that one team. But in the African American community, we like to compete. But we also want to work together as a team. Because, there's a lot of 4.0 students, but there's a lot of 1.0, 2, and 3, and we need help. And so that's what I found that we got to do competition. But we also got a partner that I try to introduce myself to everyone up there because I know how important it is to network with folks. Because a lot of people have a lot of programs. Now, you see in Fort Meade?
Yes, sir.
There's a Fort Meade alliance with all the federal agency and government, and they have an education component there. that maybe you need to talk to, and I'll give you my card and I'll share the number with you. But a lot of these people in the area, government, industry, they have an outreach program to help STEM program for mentors. So my biggest thing is competition and network. You gotta find resources because like I say, my son, you know, when he was in the program, he didn't listen to me. I feel he, but he wanted to be a part of the group. He went into business, he didn't want to go into technology, but that was fine. But once again, they work together as a team. So we gotta do team efforts. So I just wanted to share that with you about, I think competition is the key to get more girls involved, or anyone involved. But you know, people want to show they had the best project to win the prize. So, thank you.
I'm kind of curious about the influence of mathematics as being that initial stumbling block. If you look at the distribution of women in all the sub-disciplines of STEM, they're kind of dominant in biology and least dominant in engineering, which also follows that gradient of quantitative nature. Is it the math?
Before we answer that, can we I just want to tackle her question real fast, and then we'll get to the math.
I was going to mention we have a GEMS club, Girls Achieving in Math and Science, and we've again with the partnership, we recently partnered with George Mason because I work over in Fairfax, and they are going to come and run a 3-week program at my school in the summer where the kids are going to visit amusement parks, and we're going to measure. It's a forces in motion program, and it's one of those things where I mentioned it to some of my girls, and they said, "Oh, I've never been to an amusement park. I've never been on a roller coaster." So it's a first-time experience for them. The first time I ran my GEMS club in the summer, I had 4 kids that showed up. These are kids that live in a subsidized housing complex. These are kids that the parents are never home. They take care of themselves. One little girl told me she eats cereal for 3 meals a day, and I went over and just knocked on doors after the first meeting, and I said, hey, Jalissa, I really want you to be at the school. Can you walk there tomorrow with your sister? And it's just making the extra effort to get those kids out the door and get them coming. The second day, I had 7 kids, and by the end of the session, I had 20 kids there. So it's making the effort to do that on the part of as an educator.
I think another big part of that too is for the families is including the families in a lot of the activities, doing them at odd hours so the families can come, and inviting not just the parents but the little brothers and sisters and everything, and making the activities collaborative so the families can see how exciting they are, what's going on, what the science is, and it helps to develop a little more of that buy-in. I think that's a big piece that is often difficult to do because everybody's been working all week, and often something in the evenings on a Saturday may not be exactly what everybody wants to do, but that's a big piece. And I've known a couple organizations that I've worked with where we've done things like that. All of a sudden, the kids are able to come more often. Their parents are more likely to bring them to the activities because they've seen how excited they are, and they were excited too.
That same housing complex we created a community garden, and that really involves the parents in the process as well.
Yeah, I just want to follow on basically kind of the same thing. I was thinking we've had even in this city, and I'm active in this city, and I know that even in this city there are programs where, again, like Kathleen was saying, I understand what you're communicating. I was in the Big Brothers program. I was in the Big Brothers program for 9 years with the same little brother in a very disadvantaged neighborhood, and it's one of the sadnesses I carry around to this day with me of how hard it was for me to see him in the situation he was in, and I tried to spend as much time as I could with him to role model, to give him opportunities, but to know that he was going back every day to where he was, and the situation he had to deal with was overwhelming, just utterly overwhelming. So the programs I've seen that make a success, and it's hard because even if you have a success for a period of time, if it's not consistent, the next year, they go through a program and they're engaged and they're loving it, and then that year's over and then it goes away. So I think the ones that work, the things I've seen that work, or even where and we see it at the ARC Center. We're starting to see it in Anacostia, where Washington Ballet, Boys Girls Club, they've put together kind of a place where people come, and they use what Kathleen says. A lot of them say, you have to, it's kind of like the KIPP model of schools, where your family has to be involved to some, you've got to pull in that involvement. Because I did see where even there are times it wasn't even so much that they weren't getting the support, but that when they were going home, they were actually, their knees were being cut out from underneath them because some of the parents felt threatened by the knowledge that the child had, and it was like they themselves. So you really have to, I don't have an answer for, basically what I'm saying, I don't have the answer. I know that, there's ways you have to be consistent, with all of us, all the organizations. Yeah, I'd love to see more, and it needs to be figured out. And, I'm with you here. Sorry.
Yeah, I think your point is really, really important. I think this is why we're all up here anyway. It's not, this is a problem that's been going on for years and years, and people who are really in the STEM field and really trying to do this kind of outreach are very frustrated that it hasn't really, not much has been done over the past 20, 30 years. I think one of the big reasons for that is because there's not one place for kids to go to. There's not one network of STEM mentors, for example. There are a lot of different, I know that there are a lot of online networks of mentoring, and Mamta's a part of one as well through NASA, but there's not one place where you can go and teachers can say, interested in STEM, go here. So that's one of the issues. I think there's a lot of opportunity for teachers. If every teacher could be like you, I think we'd be in good shape. I think there's an opportunity for counselors as well. A lot of counselors are not armed with this kind of information. So if counselors are saying, go into this field because this is what you're suited for, well, that's it. If that's the one person in these girls' lives who they're looking to and they're not being told to really go for everything, and then if their family can't really make up for that either, then they're only going to achieve what they're being told. So I think there's a big opportunity for teachers, counselors. We can't put the onus on parents. We know that. We as a society already do that too much. One of the research findings that we found was that fathers play a key role in kind of planting the seed in STEM, but we know that half of our population don't have fathers in their homes and in their lives, so there's a big opportunity there as well. We can't just leave it up to that one person who accidentally is telling their girl to be in STEM. It has to be more it has to just be a status quo as opposed to an accident. So I hear you, I agree. I would encourage you to check out the local Girl Scout Council in your area too. Everything's online nowadays. We have 112 councils across the country, so chances are the local council is doing some kind of outreach program, some kind of career day, some kind of initiative that is involved. There's a lot of stuff for high school girls that ties into careers, as well as a lot of other after-school organizations as well. So if the schools aren't really fulfilling what they need, which is unfortunate, a lot of times after schools really try very hard to fill that gap as well. Are we up to math? I'll just say a quick thing about math is that girls and boys actually do pretty much the same in terms of achievement in math. Girls may be 1 or 2 points behind boys, but that's, again, if we're talking about the differences that have been made and the achievements that have been made over the past 20 years, that's one thing that I think has been done that's a positive for girls, is that they are very good at math. It's not an issue of girls are bad in math, girls don't have spatial skills. No, girls are doing fine in math. That's not the issue. I think it's the sort of, well, I'm good in math and now what? I think it takes that one teacher that says, you're good in math and science, you're good in math, you should be an engineer. And then all of a sudden the idea is planted, okay, I can be an engineer, but not every teacher does that, not every mom does that, and not every dad does that. So I think the next step beyond I'm good in math, now what? I think there's so much opportunity there for teachers, for counselors, et cetera, to say, here are the careers you can be in or go for if you're good in math. And I was just outside talking to the engineering guy from GWU, and he handed me a pamphlet on cybersecurity, and I thought, that is really cool. Now, see, I would have been interested in that 10 years ago. So there's so many opportunities. You just, again, I keep saying by accident, kids just find out about these things by accident and then they go ahead and just follow that path. It should not be an accident anymore. It should just be general knowledge. This is what you do. So I think that's one of the big opportunities for math is just exposure and knowing about career possibilities.
While girls may be as good at math as boys are, they are actually more susceptible to what we call stereotype threat. So if they're about to take a math test and you subject them to sort of comments like, oh, I hope you don't bomb this test, and oh, you're really not very good at math, then, so I don't know how you're going to do. If you say that to a boy, doesn't affect his performance. But the data shows that if you do that to a girl, it will affect her performance. So there's a lot of thinking we have to do just about the subtle cues that we give to our children, to the children in our classrooms, to just everybody we interact with about whether we could be affecting their performance just by the way we talk to them, even if we're not saying anything as overt as, oh, you're totally going to bomb that test. There's still, there might be something subtle in the way we talk to them that could influence performance as well.
I think it's important too to change teachers' attitudes, the people that are educating our youth, because so many times I walk into classrooms where teachers, they don't like math, and you can tell. So it's one of those things. I think bringing in curriculum and specialists and trainings, and Fairfax County is amazing with what they provide for us. But we use a program through UConn that's Project M2, which is all hands-on project-based learning. There's great opportunities out there. Again, it's just finding that and having teachers buy into it, and that's my biggest challenge.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in some way there, because for me, it wasn't until I got to college that I realized this really explicit linkage between science and mathematics. And it's not made. It's not made at the time when people are choosing or thinking about what they want to do with their lives. It's not until after the fact. So if you have a girl who's really good at math, she might not know that math and science are linked, so she might not even see that as an option.
And with our curriculum now, teachers are so short on time. It's, everything's just crunched into that school day, and it never seems to move enough. And I think that truly innovative teachers find a way to make all those disciplines connect and use project-based learning in the classroom. Those are the teachers that excel, and the kids do too.
Yeah, our experience is just that, like you said, the math is actually the language of the sciences and engineering, and it is a concept. It is a human-created concept of how we talk about things, and therefore, to some degree, it's a little harder to understand than, say, even physical concepts, because physical concept, you understand if I push on something, if you go opposite. I mean, you can almost explain that, but when you're like X plus Y, what? So, one of the, and I'm speaking not from my educational credentials, because I've got a PhD, but I'm a rocket scientist, so I'm not an educator. But I'm speaking as being a parent, as having been a child, and how I learned, and having observed what happens in my challenger centers. You teach math in a way that it's, just like I was saying, you engage kids in something, that it's meaningful, like now like suddenly my 8-year-old twin boys, money is meaningful to them. So, it's easy to talk about how much money and they're calculating, and but each kid is different, and you find where they're at, and that's what we do, at the Challenger Center when we do those things is, they're interested enough in this topic, or it's something you're doing. I mean, I did an art project with my kids because we moved into a house with 10 ceilings like this high as this room, and big walls, and we didn't have art for the wall, so I decided we're going to do an art project. We went to the National Gallery and we studied, artists that I thought we could recreate, like, Jasper Johns or, Jackson Pollock probably. And we met with local artists and studios, and we went to the, art supply shop. And one of the things, this just gives you an example of how you integrate arts and sciences. So we were doing all these things, we did conceptual, sketches in the National Gallery. We did this whole thing. But we went to get our art supplies, and we found out, stretch canvases are really expensive. They're super expensive. But a big roll of canvas is cheap, and there's, the twins and me, and we're all going to paint, some huge canvases. So we found out there was just happened to be an 18-foot roll, 18-foot by 5-foot wide roll of canvas. So I'm like, guys, can we use this? and got them to like, do the, the conceptual thinking of a big rectangle, how would I split that 3 ways, and then the math of, and this was before they were introduced to division in classroom of, 18 divided by 3. For those of you who are quick, it's 6. So you did that, and I think that's the kind of thing, and I make this all kind of sound simple because it's about where my head is, but that's the kind of thing I think we need to do in our lives, and probably the good teacher. What you're talking about is project-based, and I just kind of put it in my layman's terms, but I think that's the way we've got to address these kind of math issues. It's something real. I think we all turn off when it's like when one train's heading to the other on the tracks, and they're going to collide. It's like, why are they both on the track?
Any other questions?
I'm a historian, but I was very fortunate to be the historian for the Educator Astronaut program from 2003. For those who don't know what it is, Krista McAuliffe, who died in the Challenger, was just, I would say that way, just a teacher, but she was a social studies teacher. To be an educator astronaut, you had to have majored in STEM subjects. You basically needed to have all the qualifications of an astronaut, plus be certified teacher in K-12. And I have 2 questions about that. One of them was, one of the purposes, sort of the dual purpose, was to inspire teachers or people to become teachers of STEM subjects. And I want to know if there was any follow-up, if you know about that, any success that way. And secondly, to inspire students. And the 2 astronauts who work with the program, Barbara Morgan, who was the first educator astronaut, and she flew twice, I believe, and Leland Melvin, who is now, I guess, head of the Office of Education. Incredibly inspiring people. And so I just want to sort of know about how that worked. And secondly, in general, one of the purposes was that having human beings in space was really the most inspirational way you could get people involved in STEM. And when I would talk to engineers at NASA, they were inspired by Apollo, going to the moon. So I want to know, again, how significant keeping people in space. We've got 2 people in there who might be able to answer. We'll both contribute.
Yeah, okay. First of all, Barbara is on my board of directors, and I have in perpetuity, my organization has an in perpetuity agreement with NASA, and so Leland's my counterpart. Actually, he and I started our careers as young engineers at NASA Langley. I've known him for 20 years. Those are both fabulous people. In terms of your question, can you take teachers who are not STEM kind of trained and inspire and actually almost train them? Is that kind of the...
Just has there been follow-up? Have people said I became a teacher because of the Educator Astronaut program? Have I decided to study STEM subjects because of this program? Or have I been inspired by people in space?
Well,
as opposed to robots?
Yeah, what we find at our centers, so we have like I said, we have the 45 centers around the globe, and they are run by teachers. These are teachers, and I was just talking with Kathleen about this on the way in. I don't actually have, I have not looked at our statistics, but our sense just from the discussions we've had, they did not predominantly come from a science background. They were an educator, usually have some specialties, but they had a love of the space exploration and science in general, so those are the people who are at we've got hundreds of them literally at these centers, and they're the most engaging, enthusiastic. These are the educators you want your kids with, and it's also interesting for me to note, and just an observation, but like 95, probably 90% of them are women. And I mean, I think generally, and I don't know what the statistics are, I think that there is a slant towards more women. Is there still more women teachers in the, so you know, it's probably just more of an outcome of that. But it's interesting because for us, they're the ones teaching this STEM, you know, education in our centers to the students. So there's that aspect. I'll leave it there for, and you know, yes, having a human space program is inspiring. I worry about that right now. I know absolutely in the past, this, you know, the golden age of, you know, space, the Apollo and, you know, all that stuff, but, you know, as each year goes by, unless, you know, I mean, you know, today is the 40th anniversary of the launch of Apollo 17, which was the last mission to the moon. That's 40 years ago, the last human mission to the moon. So less and less people know what's going on with that, and it's less and less inspiring, and we're, you know, we're a different society as well. I mean, great for technology and media that we have so many things we can view now. We have our options to pick. You know, 40 years ago, there were 3 stations we watched, and they all broadcast the same thing, actually. It was just a different broadcaster doing it. And so there was, you know, one story for the day. Today it's 300, and you get to pick whether you can watch the Housewives of New Jersey or, you know, whatever it is. I mean, you know, so I do worry about that. I don't know what the answer is.
So I actually have found the sentiment to be slightly different than and what Dr. Bush said, but yeah. So we'll play the. Well, that may be a, you know, part of my personality, the positivity. But with Morgan, the way we met actually was I went to her school, to a camp that she held, and I spoke to her students, and from that, teachers, she spread it to other teachers that said, oh, she came to me, and, you know, the kids really liked it. And so before we knew it, she started an epidemic of Skype calls that I have made into classrooms across the DC metro area, and now into the Houston area as well. And I have to tell you, when those students come on the Skype call, first they're just fascinated by the technology of Skype, that they can even talk to somebody not in the room with them. But then when I talk to them about, I don't even have to talk to them. They will ask me a plethora of questions about space and space exploration and sending people into space. And I think that fire is still there. And I think part of the reason is teachers are teaching it in school still. Teachers are using space as a way to bring science into school, which, by the way, makes me extremely happy. It makes me smile. And this isn't just Morgan's classroom. This is now spread into multiple areas, including DC, inner city DC, where teachers have said, can you come to my school? If you can't come, can you get on Skype and talk to my students? And I've talked to a breadth of schools from many socioeconomic backgrounds. And the one constant is they're all excited about space exploration. The second reason I think people may still be excited in space exploration is the commercialization of space. So that's a topic even kids ask me about. They ask me about SpaceX. And I mean, I think when a 10-year-old asks you about it, that's exciting. It's very exciting. And then one statistic that I do know, because I don't have the exact statistics for your first question about the educator astronauts, but in terms of sending humans into space, NASA's taking astronaut applications. They took one for this year for a class to start next year. And normally they get, during the shuttle program, they would get about 3,500 people who applied for the spot. The year before the shuttle program, astronauts, 1978, the first year that women were allowed to apply, NASA got almost 8,000 applications. So it was a huge interest back in the 70s to become an astronaut. It tailed off during the shuttle program to about 3,500 a year. This year, mind you, the shuttles ended. They got 7,800 applications. Somewhere between 68 and 78. Okay, so somewhere in the 7,000. 7,000 applications. So you're talking about double the number of people who have applied for this pretty esteemed job. And a very small number of them get it, but you doubled the application. So I think people are still excited about it, and I would attribute part of that to commercialization. That's my opinion.
Can I have one follow-up? So yeah, I'd be a terrible representative of my organization if I didn't say, like, the whole core of what we do is inspire kids through space missions. So yeah, you're right. I mean, they love it. I was looking at the bigger, broader out in public view, but yeah, I mean, that's, to be honest, like I said earlier, we're tricking them to learn, and what we're doing is STEM education. The whole space thing is like a hook, you know, and it is a great hook.
Exactly.
It's a fabulous hook. The other,
I agree with you on the social, society.
Can I reveal something?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay. So the other thing, Mamta's being very humble here, but when you say, does it have an effect? She was just, when she's talking about the statistics of how many people apply, whatever, she's an astronaut candidate right at this very moment, just announced.
What they come to our classrooms and tell us, it works. I'm a little girl who grew up to have a chance at it.
One of the most exciting weeks that I spent when I was with the program was I went through a week with the finalists. And that included one of the people who became an educator astronaut and flew.
I think it's an exciting way to hook kids. I think you're right. It's an exciting way to trick them into learning cool stuff.
Yeah, and I think the purpose of the program is not just to funnel people into space, but to get them involved and teachers involved in STEM altogether.
Yeah, it's funny, our organization, our formal title is Challenger Center for Space Science and Education. And we're looking at, I'm trying to encourage the board and myself to try and change that. First of all, it's way too many syllables for me. Nobody ever says it. Second of all, it creates this misguided notion that we're all about space, we're just studying planets or whatever. And it couldn't be further from the truth. We're teaching biology, chemistry, and concepts of math. So we're looking at changing our name to Challenger Center, which is what everybody else has anyway.
Any other questions?
I've been out of the formal education world for a little while, but you mentioned that teachers that don't enjoy teaching math and science. And I know that when I got my teaching credential, I was the only one who had a background in science when I got my teaching credential. And in California at the time, you had to get an undergrad in something else before you got your teaching credential. How have things changed in the last 15, 20 years to help get elementary school teachers, particularly, more excited to teach science?
Sure. So I think a lot of liberal arts colleges now do require for their education programs, and I went through one, where you have to have a major and then you minor in education. So a lot of people are coming into the field of education with a specialization, more so than in the past. I think that schools, at least some schools, are doing a really good job of training teachers that don't have any background knowledge in those fields. And they do it by partnering with local universities. And we have cohorts throughout Fairfax County where these people come in from the universities, and that, for example, I'm in right now at my school through George Mason. It's free. And George Mason, they write a grant, they get STEM's money from the government, and then they come in and they teach the teachers. So my professors are math and science gurus over at George Mason, and they come in and they teach us how to, for example, on Monday I did this whole unit on, or a whole activity on using gears on a bike to teach ratios, and we did a color wheel and using Crayola crayons and that kind of stuff. So it's stuff like that filters into the schools. Again, it's just knowing where to look, and like you were saying, there isn't a centralized location to find that information, and that's what's so challenging for teachers. And I guess my role in the school is to just serve as a resource for that type of learning, so that they can know what they're doing in the classroom.
We are out of time.
So I'd like to just thank the audience and the panel for what I thought was a lively discussion on a topic that resonates with me personally as well, and I think it's a common interest for those of us who are in the room. I know we didn't have many answers per se to fix the world's problems, but I think we're all a step closer just being able to discuss that and have a think tank. So thank you so much for participating, and thank you to the panel.